Nikon FM2, the best pure mechanical 35mm SLR camera. I don't easily call something the best because the best means there is nothing better than it. When I say that Nikon FM2 is the best, I have to be prepared to answer people's question. Are you sure there is nothing better than FM2? First, we need to clarify the concept of pure mechanical SLR camera. What does pure mechanical mean? In the film camera period, mechanical camera means the camera shutter is mechanically driven and does not need a battery. A mechanical camera may have a battery, but the battery is for metering only. The camera can take pictures without the battery, albeit without metering. In contrast, an electronic camera is a camera that needs a battery to drive its shutter. The camera cannot take a picture without a battery. By this definition, cameras such as Nikon F2 and Nikon FM2 are mechanical cameras, whereas Nikon F3 and Nikon FE are electronic cameras. Why do I say FM2 is the best mechanical 35mm SLR camera? I put all well-known mechanical 35mm SLR cameras in the following table. And let's do a comparison. I call those cameras made before 1976 early cameras, and I call cameras made after 1976 later cameras. Mechanical cameras are mostly made before 1976 and are early cameras. These cameras are relatively primitive in terms of functions. Typically, they are big and heavy. They use old cadmium sulfide metering element instead of silicon photodiode metering element. They use microprism focusing screen instead of split image focusing screen. Their viewfinder are relatively dark and don't have much information inside. They use mercury battery, which is banned, instead of alkaline battery. Their maximum shutter speed only reaches 1,000th of a second. Minolta SRT-101, Canon FTB, and Nikromat FTN are typical early mechanical SLRs. As you can see from the table, after 1976, there are not many new mechanical SLR cameras released. The best and the most popular later mechanical SLRs after 1976 and before 1982 are Contax MX, Nikon F2A, Nikon F2AS, and Nikon FM. The development of mechanical SLRs reached its ceiling in mid-1970. It was difficult to develop new functions by mechanical means. For example, aperture priority auto exposure could not be achieved mechanically. It is hard to achieve stable and accurate shutter speed longer than 1 second. That is why major camera makers like Canon and Minolta shifted their effort to electronic cameras such as Canon AE1, Minolta XE, and XD, and stopped developing new mechanical SLRs. If Nikon took the same strategy as Canon and Minolta and stopped making new mechanical SLR cameras after FM, then the best mechanical SLR cameras in the world would be Nikon F2AS and FM. However, Nikon seemed to have a deep feeling about mechanics. When few people are interested in mechanical SLRs, Nikon released FM2 in 1982. Since then, FM2 has become the best 35mm mechanical SLR. Some people would argue that Nikon F2 is the best mechanical SLR. I agree that as a professional camera, F2 is more finely made than the semi-professional camera FM2. I myself is a big fan of F2. F2 has more functions than FM2, such as removable viewfinder. However, FM2 was released 10 years after F2. In terms of technology, FM2 is more advanced than F2. FM2 has maximum shutter speed of 4,000 of a second, which is not achievable even with electronic cameras made by other companies years later. The shutter speed of F2 only reaches 2,000 of a second, and its shutter can slow down in extreme cold environment. Nikon used to provide service to change lubrication oil for F2 during winter season for this reason. However, FM2 does not have this problem because FM2 gets rid of lubrication oil and uses Nikon's proprietary technology called minimal space lubrication. You may mention Nikon FM3A. However, FM3A is not a pure mechanical SLR. It is better than FM2, but the better part is the electronic part, not mechanical part. The functions of aperture priority auto exposure, TTL flash exposure, and DX film auto coding that are not found in FM2 are electronic functions, impossible for a mechanical camera. FM3A exactly demonstrates that FM2 has reached the mechanical summit. What about Contax S2? Yes, Contax S2 is similar to Nikon FM2 and also has a shutter that can reach 4,000 of a second. However, Contax S2 is not as practical as FM2. It does not show lens aperture in the viewfinder, it does not accept motor drive, its meter is not as sensitive as FM2, its shutter is not as reliable as FM2's. It has other problems such as mirror fall off. It is more expensive because it is made of titanium alloy covered with lamb leather. It's like a luxury toy made in small quantity rather than a practical tool. Similarly, Leica R6.2 is an extremely well-made SLR, but it's made in small quantity. It does not have sufficient lenses to match it. It is not a practical tool. Nikon FM2 was produced for 19 years without a competitor in extreme loneliness. Since its release, it was rated as the best manual exposure SLR by Popular Photography magazine every year until it was replaced by FM3A. Here is the comment on FM2 from December 1995 issue of Popular Photography magazine. Dig into the kit of even the most up-to-date photojournalists, and chances are that somewhere in it you will find the manual focusing and manual match diode metering Nikon FM2. When the weather or the situation gets rough, many pros still rely on the mechanics of FM2N rather than the more sophisticated electronics of more modern cameras.